I never thought I'd feel like a stranger in my own house. But here I am, Margaret Hargrove, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea that's gone cold, watching my daughter-in-law, Charlotte, flutter around like she owns the place. It's not that I begrudge her presence. This is her home now, but sometimes it feels like I'm just another piece of furniture. Useful when needed, ignored when inconvenient. Charlotte has always been particular. She's polished, poised, and perpetually perfect, with her tailored blazers and designer handbags. And then there's me, an old woman who wore her last pair of heels to Daniel's high school graduation. I don't mind being simple, I've lived a good life. But lately I can't shake the feeling that I'm invisible. Especially when Patricia, Charlotte's mother, is around. Patricia breezes into our lives like royalty, expecting everyone to bow down, and Charlotte makes sure they do. Meanwhile, I'm left scrubbing pans and folding laundry while they sip wine on the patio. Oh, how I wish I could say something, but what would be the point? They wouldn't listen anyway. So I sit quietly, nursing my tea and wondering if this is what growing older really means, becoming irrelevant. My son Daniel is caught in the middle of all this mess. He loves me, I know he does, but he also loves his wife. Sometimes I catch him glancing between us, torn, unsure of whose side to take. Poor boy. He probably thinks if he stays quiet long enough, the tension will dissolve on its own. Spoiler alert, it won't. Still, I can't blame him entirely. Charlotte has a way of twisting things, making even the smallest disagreement seem like world-ending drama. Once I suggested we repaint the living room, a neutral beige instead of that garish red Charlotte picked out, and she acted like I'd insulted her entire existence. You just don't understand modern design, she snapped before storming off. Modern design, my foot. That shade of red belongs in a horror movie, not a family home. But I keep my mouth shut because I love Daniel. I want him to be happy. If that means biting my tongue every time Charlotte rolls her eyes or sighs dramatically, so be it. At least that's what I tell myself. Deep down, though, resentment simmers. I wonder how long I can hold it back before it boils over. When Patricia announced she'd be staying with us for 6 weeks after her hip surgery, I should have seen it coming. Of course, Charlotte insisted it was easier for everyone if I took care of her. Easier for whom exactly? Certainly not me. Patricia arrived with 3 suitcases and an air of entitlement so thick you could cut it with a knife. The first day she complained about the guest bedroom mattress, too firm, the water pressure in the shower, too weak, and the lack of fresh flowers in the house, too drab. By the end of the week I was ready to pack up and leave myself. Charlotte fawned over her mother like a loyal subject, bringing her breakfast in bed and running errands at her beck and call. Meanwhile, I was relegated to chauffeur duty, driving Patricia to physical therapy appointments and grocery stores. Not once did Charlotte offer to help, not even when Patricia demanded I carry her bags up the stairs despite my bad knees. Oh, thank you very much. By the second week I started dreading mornings. Every day brought a new complaint, a new chore, a new reminder that I wasn't good enough. And yet I kept smiling, pretending everything was fine. After all, what choice did I have? It was during one of those tense family dinners that things truly began to unravel. Patricia had invited herself to stay for supper, naturally, and Charlotte spent hours preparing what she called a gourmet meal. Translation: store-bought pasta with sauce from a jar, garnished with parsley she chopped herself. "This looks wonderful, darling," Patricia cooed as Charlotte set the dish on the table. Then she turned to me, raising an eyebrow. "Not quite as impressive as your lasagna, Margaret, but still passable." Passable. The word hit me like a slap across the face. My lasagna, the same recipe I'd been making since Daniel was a toddler, was suddenly not quite as impressive? Was this woman serious? I opened my mouth to respond, but Daniel gave me a warning glance. "Don't start, Mom," his eyes pleaded. For once I listened. Instead of arguing, I forced a tight smile and passed the salad bowl. But inside something shifted. A tiny crack formed in the dam holding back my frustration. Soon I knew it would burst. 2 days later I found out about the spa retreat. Charlotte didn't bother telling me directly. No, she left a brochure on the counter as if I'd stumble upon it accidentally. "Oh, Margaret, did you see this?" she said breezily when I confronted her. "Patricia and I are going next weekend. Isn't that exciting?" Exciting? Hardly. More like infuriating. Here I was, slaving away to make their lives easier, and they couldn't even include me in their plans. When I mentioned this, Charlotte laughed it off. "Oh, you wouldn't enjoy it anyway," she said. It's more of a mother-daughter bonding thing. Bonding. Right. Because apparently mothers-in-law don't count as family. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying her words in my head. You wouldn't enjoy it anyway. As if she knew anything about what I enjoyed or didn't. The anger bubbled beneath the surface, hotter than ever. I realized then that I couldn't keep swallowing my pride. Something had to change. But what could I possibly do? The breaking point came during Patricia's birthday party. A lavish affair complete with caterers, balloons, and a DJ spinning tunes nobody over 30 understood. Charlotte organized the whole thing, naturally turning our modest living room into a scene straight out of a reality TV show. Margaret, could you grab the extra chairs from the basement? She asked, handing me a list of tasks longer than my arm. And make sure the trash is taken out before the guests arrive. Of course. While she played hostess, I played maid. I hauled chairs upstairs, arranged platters of hors d'oeuvres, and cleaned up spills as they happened. By the time the cake was served, my feet were screaming and my patience was non-existent. Then, as if to twist the knife further, Patricia stood up to give a speech. Thank you all for coming, she began, beaming. Especially my darling Charlotte, who worked so hard to make today special. And of course to Margaret. She paused, glancing at me with barely concealed disdain. For keeping the house tidy. That was it. That was the final straw. As laughter rippled through the crowd, I felt something snap inside me. I didn't say a word, I couldn't trust myself to speak, but I made a silent vow right then and there. This ends now. The next morning I woke up with a strange sense of clarity. For years I'd let Charlotte and Patricia walk all over me, convincing myself it was easier to endure than to fight back. But no more. It was time to take control of my life, and teach them a lesson they'd never forget. First, I started documenting everything. I snapped photos of my neglected hobbies. The half-finished quilt gathering dust in the attic, the easel in the corner of my room where paintbrushes sat unused. I saved receipts from gifts I'd bought for Charlotte and Patricia, reminders of how much I'd given without receiving anything in return. Most importantly, I wrote letters, pages and pages of thoughts and feelings I'd buried for too long. Then I reached out to Eleanor, an old college friend who runs a charming bed and breakfast in Tuscany. We hadn't spoken in years, but she welcomed me warmly when I called. Come whenever you're ready, she said. We'll make it work. For the first time in ages I felt a spark of excitement. This wasn't just about escaping, it was about rediscovering myself. And oh, how I planned to savor every moment of it. As I quietly plotted my departure, the household began to notice subtle changes in me, though they misinterpreted them entirely. Charlotte, ever observant of anything that might inconvenience her, started commenting on my frequent phone calls. Who are you always talking to? She asked one afternoon, her tone dripping with suspicion. Just catching up with old friends, I replied breezily, though my heart was pounding. Eleanor and I had been exchanging messages daily, finalizing plans for my escape. But I couldn't let Charlotte suspect a thing. So I added a deflecting smile. You know how it is, when you get older you realize time is precious. She narrowed her eyes but said nothing more. Later that evening, Daniel approached me in the kitchen. Mom, is everything okay? He asked, his brow furrowed. You seem different lately. I almost faltered then. Almost told him everything, the hurt, the anger, the loneliness I'd buried deep inside. But instead I forced another smile. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just thinking about life, I suppose. He nodded slowly, clearly unconvinced, but didn't press further. That night as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I felt a pang of guilt. Was I being unfair? Should I confront them instead of running away? But then I remembered Patricia's condescending smirk, Charlotte's dismissive remarks, and the countless times I'd swallowed my pride. No, this wasn't about fairness, it was about survival. Over the next few days I sold off some of my most treasured possessions. An antique desk Daniel had given me years ago, a pearl necklace from my late husband, and several pieces of vintage china I'd inherited from my mother. It wasn't easy parting with these items. They carried memories, but I reminded myself that freedom came at a price. Charlotte noticed immediately. Why are you getting rid of all your nice things? She demanded one morning, holding up a box of dishes I'd set aside for donation. They're just collecting dust, I said lightly. Besides, it feels good to simplify. Her gaze hardened. If you need money, we can help. I don't need your charity, I interrupted, sharper than I intended. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and unspoken. For a moment I thought she might argue, but instead she turned on her heel and walked away. That night I packed a small suitcase with essentials, clothes, toiletries, my journal, and hid it under the bed. Each item felt like a promise to myself. A new beginning, a fresh start. By the time I finished, I could hardly contain my excitement. In less than a week I'd be gone. But first I needed to leave them something to remember me by. On the morning of my departure I rose before dawn, careful not to wake anyone. With trembling hands I placed a handwritten letter on the kitchen table, propped against the sugar bowl where it couldn't be missed. Then I slipped out the door, dragging my suitcase behind me. The letter was brief but deliberate. Dear family. By the time you read this I'll be far away. Don't worry, I'm safe and I've chosen this path willingly. Perhaps you'll wonder why I left without saying goodbye. The truth is, I needed space to breathe, to rediscover who I am outside the shadow of your expectations. To Daniel, you've always been my greatest joy. Please forgive me for leaving so suddenly, but know that my love for you has never wavered. To Charlotte, I hope one day you'll understand the weight of your actions. Until then, I leave you with this riddle, where the sun kisses the hills and art speaks louder than words. Follow the clues if you wish to find me. With love, Margaret. As I boarded the train to the airport, I allowed myself a small smile. They wouldn't find me easily, not unless they were willing to work for it. And maybe, just maybe, the journey would teach them something about themselves. It didn't take long for chaos to erupt back home. Daniel found the letter during breakfast, his face pale as he read it aloud. What does this mean? He muttered, running a hand through his hair. Where could she have gone? Charlotte snatched the note from him, scanning it quickly. Her lips tightened into a thin line. This is ridiculous, she snapped. She can't just disappear like this. What will people think? What we've done, Daniel corrected sharply. His voice cracked with emotion. God, Charlotte, did you ever stop to consider how Mom felt? All those little jabs, the way you treated her like she didn't matter. She's exaggerating, Charlotte shot back, defensive. I never meant to hurt her. But you did, Daniel said quietly. And now she's gone because of it. For once, Charlotte had no retort. She sank into a chair, her confidence crumbling as reality set in. Meanwhile, Daniel grabbed his phone and started calling everyone he could think of. Friends, neighbors, even distant relatives, hoping someone had seen or heard from me. But they were chasing shadows. I was already thousands of miles away, watching the sunrise over Tuscany's rolling hills. Tuscany welcomed me with open arms, or rather Eleanor did. She greeted me at the train station with a warm hug and a basket of fresh bread, leading me to her cozy bed and breakfast nestled among olive groves. This place is magical, she assured me as we drove through winding roads lined with cypress trees. You'll feel like yourself again in no time. He was right. Within days I fell into a rhythm I hadn't known in years. Mornings were spent painting landscapes in the garden, afternoons exploring local markets, and evenings sharing stories with Eleanor and her guests. For the first time in ages I felt alive. Still, I couldn't resist sending Daniel postcards, each one containing cryptic hints about my location. Here the fields glow golden under the summer sun, read one. Another teased, artisans carve beauty from stone in ways that will take your breath away. Each card was a test, a chance for them to prove they cared enough to follow the trail. And secretly I hoped they would. Back home, tensions reached a boiling point when Patricia suffered a heart attack. Charlotte rushed to the hospital, panic gripping her chest as doctors worked to stabilize her mother. For hours she sat alone in the waiting room, replaying our last conversation in her mind. You wouldn't enjoy it anyway, she'd said about the spa retreat. How cruel those words sounded now. Had I felt the same way, that I didn't belong? That I wasn't worth including? When Patricia finally woke up, weak but stable, Charlotte broke down. I'm sorry, Mom, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I've been so selfish. I pushed everyone away, including Margaret. Patricia, usually sharp-tongued, simply patted her hand. Maybe it's time you fixed what you've broken, she murmured. That night Charlotte called Daniel. We have to find her, she said, her voice trembling. Not just for us, for ourselves. We owe her that much. Daniel and Charlotte's search for me turned into a full-blown investigation. They scoured my room, piecing together clues from the postcards I'd sent. Each cryptic message became a puzzle they had to solve. A riddle that led them closer to Tuscany but never directly there. This one says, "Where wine flows like rivers," Daniel muttered, holding up a postcard adorned with an image of grapevines. "It has to be Italy." Charlotte nodded, her usual polished demeanor replaced by frantic determination. "And this one, where stone whispers secrets, that could mean Florence. The city is famous for its marble sculptures." They hired a private investigator, a man named Mr. Grayson, who specialized in locating missing persons. He interviewed my friends, including Eleanor, though she played coy when asked about my whereabouts. "Margaret needed space," she told him firmly. "If she wanted you to find her, she would have made it easier." Despite their efforts, the trail remained frustratingly elusive. Every time they thought they were close, another clue would send them spiraling in a new direction. It was maddening, but also exactly what I intended. If they truly cared enough, they'd keep searching until they found me. In Tuscany, I embraced a life I hadn't allowed myself in decades. I painted sun-drenched landscapes, learned to cook traditional Italian dishes, and even started teaching art classes to other travelers. My hands, once worn from scrubbing floors and washing dishes, now created beauty instead of cleaning up after others. But the most surprising change came within me. I realized how much of my identity had been tied to being a mother, a grandmother, a caregiver. Without those roles defining me, I discovered parts of myself I'd forgotten existed. The adventurous spirit who dreamed of traveling the world, the artist who saw wonder in every brushstroke, the woman who deserved respect, not servitude. So I missed Daniel. Not the Daniel who stood silently while his wife belittled me, but the little boy who used to climb into my lap and ask me to read bedtime stories. I wondered if he still remembered that version of me, or if he only saw the quiet, obedient woman I'd become. Back home, Daniel stumbled upon something unexpected while going through my belongings. A stack of journals hidden in the attic. Flipping through the pages, he uncovered years of unspoken pain. Entries detailing every slight, every insult, every moment I'd smiled through gritted teeth to keep the peace. "She wrote all this?" Charlotte whispered, reading over his shoulder. Her face paled as she recognized her own actions reflected back at her. I didn't realize." "You never bothered to look," Daniel said bitterly. "You never cared enough to see how unhappy she was." Charlotte sank onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. For the first time she understood the depth of her mistakes, not just with me but with everyone around her. Her controlling nature, her obsession with perfection, her inability to empathize, it had cost her more than she ever imagined. "I have to make this right," she said finally. "No matter what it takes." Armed with newfound resolve, Daniel booked a flight to Italy, determined to bring me home. He followed the trail of postcards, visiting picturesque villages and speaking to locals who vaguely remembered seeing a silver-haired woman painting by the riverbank. Finally, he arrived in the small Tuscan town where Eleanor's bed and breakfast was located. She greeted him warmly but refused to confirm whether I was staying there. "You'll have to ask Margaret yourself," she said with a knowing smile. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel found me sitting on a hill overlooking the valley, sketchpad in hand. For a moment neither of us spoke. We simply stared at each other, years of unspoken words hanging in the air. "Mom," Daniel began, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry. I should have seen how unhappy you were. I let you down." I set aside my sketchpad and reached for his hand. "You're here now," I said softly. "That's what matters." Meanwhile, back in the States, Charlotte worked tirelessly to repair the damage she'd caused. She wrote me letters, long, heartfelt apologies acknowledging her flaws and promising to change. At first I ignored them, unsure if her remorse was genuine. But over time her persistence softened my resolve. Then, during Patricia's recovery, Charlotte took full responsibility for her care, learning patience and compassion along the way. When Patricia remarked on the change, Charlotte admitted, "I've been selfish for too long. It's time I grew up." Her transformation wasn't immediate or perfect, but it was real. And when Daniel invited her to join him in Tuscany to apologize in person, she accepted without hesitation. The day of their visit, I prepared a simple meal: crusty bread, fresh tomatoes drizzled with olive oil, and a bottle of local wine. As Daniel and Charlotte approached the cottage, I felt a mix of apprehension and hope. Could we truly rebuild what had been broken? Charlotte hesitated before speaking, clearly nervous. Margaret, I don't know where to start. I've been awful to you and I'm so sorry. I promise to do better, to treat you with the love and respect you deserve. Tears welled in my eyes as I studied her face. Gone was the entitled woman who'd dismissed me. In her place stood someone humbled and sincere. Apology accepted, I said finally. But remember, actions speak louder than words. She nodded earnestly. I understand. Thank you for giving me another chance. When I returned home weeks later, it was under very different circumstances. Charlotte insisted I move into a nearby cottage she rented for me, complete with a studio space for my art. Think of it as a fresh start for all of us, she said. At first, our interactions were cautious, tinged with uncertainty. But slowly trust began to rebuild. Charlotte included me in family decisions, sought my advice and even joined me for painting sessions. Meanwhile, Daniel visited often, eager to reconnect with the mother he'd taken for granted. Life wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, but it was infinitely better than before. For the first time in years, I felt valued, respected, and loved. Inspired by my journey, I decided to write a memoir titled The Silent Exit. It chronicled my experiences as a mother-in-law navigating familial dynamics, offering insights into generational relationships and self-discovery. To my surprise, it resonated deeply with readers, sparking conversations about respect, communication, and the importance of boundaries. Book clubs across the country picked it up, and soon I was invited to speak at events and workshops. Through sharing my story, I hope to inspire others to reclaim their voices and their lives. One day, as I signed copies at a bookstore, a young woman approached me, tears in her eyes. "Your book changed my life," she said. "Thank you for reminding me that it's never too late to start over." I smiled, feeling a profound sense of fulfillment. My silent exit hadn't just transformed my family, it had touched countless lives. Just when I thought my story had reached its conclusion, a twist emerged that no one, not even me, saw coming. While sorting through old boxes, I discovered a letter written by my late husband shortly before his death. In it, he revealed that he'd secretly purchased a villa in Tuscany years ago, intending it to be a retirement gift for us. "I wanted us to grow old together surrounded by beauty," he wrote. "If I'm not there to share it with you, promise me you'll go anyway." Stunned, I contacted the lawyer handling his estate and confirmed the property was mine. The villa turned out to be breathtaking, a sprawling estate nestled among vineyards and olive groves. With Daniel and Charlotte's blessing, I decided to split my time between the US and Tuscany, hosting art retreats and welcoming guests from around the world. It was a dream I'd never dared to imagine, one made possible by both my husband's love and my own courage to leave. Years later, as I sat on the terrace of my Tuscan villa watching the sunset, I reflected on how far we'd come. Daniel and Charlotte had grown into a stronger, more united couple, raising two kind-hearted grandchildren who adored their nana. Even Patricia, now frail but content, occasionally visited, marveling at the life I'd built for myself. Through it all, I'd learned that true strength comes not from enduring hardship but from embracing change. By leaving, I hadn't abandoned my family. I'd given them the opportunity to grow. And in doing so, I'd found a piece of myself I thought I'd lost forever. The final chapter of my story isn't marked by grand gestures or dramatic revelations. Instead, it's defined by quiet moments, laughter shared over meals, paintings created under golden skies, and letters exchanged with loved ones near and far. As I sip my morning coffee, gazing out at the hills that feel like home, I know I made the right choice. Leaving wasn't easy, but staying wouldn't have been living. And so, I raise my cup to the lessons learned, the bridges rebuilt, and the future yet unwritten. After all, life is a canvas, and I intend to paint it boldly until tea.